After 19 years, Eritrea is back in the AFCON qualification, the African Cup of Nations qualification. And for many, that's simply a sports headline. But for me, perhaps something more important, something more meaningful. It's a signal. It's a signal that after being away from the world stage for a long time, the country is starting to reappear. And it's been doing that in many other aspects outside of sports as well. But even in sports, football being the latest, we've seen that in cycling and track and field and so on. And it is moments like this that tells you more about what's going on than the big announcements could. That's why I want to refer to this as part of the new era. And the new era is where when a country is absent, when a country is not participating, sometimes the narrative, the meaning, or the brand of the country is told by others instead of the country telling its own story. And in this new era, this is where, not in a direct way, but in an indirect way, the country is actually improving its image on the world stage. What do I mean by that? Overall, what I'm talking about is public diplomacy. We can even call it sports diplomacy. But how has that been showing itself in the last few years? Let's take a look at that. That's my message today. And thank you for coming, and welcome to the program. First of all, congratulations to the Red Sea Camels. It was a great play, great win. It was a sensational goal, and wishing you the best of luck in 2027 and beyond. We are definitely in a new era, and 19 years is a long time. The last time, or 19 years ago, this young men were children, and now they are full-grown men, proudly representing their country on a world stage. And that's the topic we want to address today, the representing a country. Yes, Eritrea is back on in the football arena, and let's call it this era of the re-entry to football. But like I said in the beginning, there is more to it. And for Eritreans, football fans, and also every citizen, it's the representation. It is being equal among nations that matters. What is being celebrated, of course, is football. Victory in football, re-entry to football. But what Eritreans are most excited about is to see their country being represented positively on a world stage. And with this win in 2027, even a bigger stage will be available to see Eritrea on a more positive light. And of course, all countries of the world, all citizens of the world would love to see their country being covered in the news positively, win in sports, and be celebrated and so on. But especially for Eritreans, this is more important because in the last couple of decades, for the most part, there has been a negative aspect of the news that's been dominating the headlines. And so that has something to do with, let's call it the national brand. And sports gives us this opportunity to use a soft power or a softer aspect of a country to improve that image. In fact, to even tell a better story than other headlines would tell you. And overall, there are actually companies that track this. When we think of a national brand, I'm not talking about brands of companies, but the nations as brands, for better or for worse. When we think of countries, we either think of positively or negatively about them. And that is a combination of how we perceive the news about that particular country. And most of it comes, unfortunately, from headlines. Especially with younger and third world countries. most people don't know enough about them to actually make their own mind. They usually get their perception from the headlines. Now, in this particular aspect, what we are talking about is, okay, how can sports be used for public diplomacy? Let's think of countries as brands. And in that regard, nation branding would be the strategic management of how people perceive it, what they think of it when they think of its culture and economics and politics and so on. And the whole idea is to create, just like private corporations do about their brands, the whole idea is to create a positive perception of the country, of course. And why? Yeah, because it helps with tourism, it helps with investments, it helps with exports. That's the name of the game. And to be able to do that, it helps to have a positive brand. You don't want people to think of only the negative headlines that they see when they think of that particular country. Now, let's bring it home. Let's talk about Eritrea. As far as the perception of Eritrea, the vast majority of Eritreans feel like the country is unfairly represented or unfairly branded. So that's why the excitement about sports and famous Eritreans or those with the Eritrean ancestry when they are on the world stage performing excellently in sports, there's a whole lot of excitement. So it is in this regard that we should see it. Now, why so? Because at the end of the day, that this is a diplomacy. This is the soft power of how countries exert themselves. And in a lot of ways, there's a larger diaspora community throughout the world. And a lot of them actually feel like they are the mini ambassadors of their country. So the excitement about sports, we can take a look at it from that angle. More so, I think, than a lot of other countries. It's been 33 years since Eritrea became formally independent, since 1993. So at 33, Eritrea is a relatively young country. And part of the process of making a name for itself to create its own nation brand or country brand per se, part of that process has been sports. Sports as part of the cultural diplomacy. In fact, gives a smaller country, newer country like Eritrea, a great opportunity. And in the last 3 decades, we actually have seen in an era where the countries also have been challenged in terms of economy and the war and war and no war, no peace situation, in an abnormal era of the last 33 years, we have seen actually very positive aspects in sports, where a lot of Eritrean athletes actually have made name for themselves and actually elevated the country's image and how many people know about it as well. Sometimes sports can be the ultimate equalizer. Given equal opportunity, all you have to do is show up and compete. And some Eritrean athletes have been actually very successful at this. So let's take a quick look at, not in terms of their achievements, but what they were able to do for the nation's brand, to be the mini ambassadors of their country. Of course, sports is not new to Eritrea or Eritreans. What we are talking about is Eritrea being represented on the world stage after it became independent. Before that, during the Ethiopian occupation, during the British administration, during the Italian colonization, of course, Eritreans has been participating in sports and actually thriving in it as well, including football and cycling and track and field and a whole lot of other sports as well. And during at that time, they were obviously not representing Eritrea. For example, during the Ethiopian occupation, at some point, about half of the Ethiopian national football team were represented by Eritreans. Eritreans made up about half of the members of that team. And before that, in other aspects as well. But for now, let's focus on after independence. So with that, what I call the pioneers, the foundation, the founders are some of the first successful ones are the ones we see here: Zersenay, Tadese, Daniel Teklehaimanot, Girmay Gebreselassie. Let's take a look at their achievement and what it meant in terms of nation branding, and also take a look at other athletes as well on how they are contributing to that. Let's start with Zersenay Tadese. He is the first Eritrean to win an Olympic medal for Eritrea. And Zersenay did that for 10,000 meters in 2004 in Athens. He's a 5-time world half marathon champion and held that world record in that distance for over a decade. That's impressive. Next, we have Daniel Teklehaimanot, not to be confused with yours truly, Daniel Teklai. I wish. But seriously, Daniel is a pioneer in African cycling, and he became the first rider from sub-Saharan Africa to wear the King of Mountains jersey at the Tour de France in 2015. Can't believe it's been over a decade already. He's also a multi-time African continental champion who proved that Eritrean cyclists can actually compete at the elite level with the European peloton and others. So Daniel, a great pioneer. The next pioneer is Girmay Gebreselassie. Girmay in 2015 became the youngest winner of a world championship marathon at age 19. Great achievement for him. Then in the next year, in 2016, he won the New York City Marathon as well. Another great deed. Another great pioneer, Meb Keflezgy. Meb Keflezgy is the legendary runner, an Eritrean-born American runner. Even though in the Olympics and other aspects, Meb represents the U.S. flag. At the end of the day, whenever his name is mentioned, and same thing with other similar athletes, whenever their name is mentioned, there is always the mention of Eritrea and where they are from and their backstory and so on. So one way or the other, in fact, sometimes whether they even like it or not, they represent Eritrea. And of course, in this case, Meb proudly so. So Meb is a legendary runner, a very famous person in the United States. And he is actually the only athlete to win the Boston Marathon, the New York Marathon, and an Olympic medal altogether. In that regard, he became a symbol of course, marathon is endurance and resilience. And that's what the Eritreans are known for. Speaking of nation branding, speaking of what would we want people to think of us. And then after, especially winning in 2014, the Boston Marathon, and over the next 3 decades, he's still a very well-known figure in running. And similarly, as we will see with the new generation of athletes as well, the same story applies. Sometimes they may be representing a different flag, but their background, their backstory is always attached to Eritrea. And for the most part, in fact, almost in every case, it's been very positive for Eritrea and in the kind of story that it wants to tell about itself. Let's move on to the current generation and start with the one and only Biniam Girmay. Biniam is, of course, this global cycling icon. And he's the first Black African to win a Grand Tour stage at a major classic, starting with Giro d'Italia, and as the green jersey winner of Tour de France and all his achievements since then. He's basically become the primary face of Eritrean sports, and sometimes Eritrea itself, because a lot of people were not aware of Eritrea before they became aware of Biniam Girmay. Now, we are talking about public diplomacy, sports diplomacy. In this particular case, using Biniam as an example, what are we talking about? Bottom line is, I think that's something that everybody knows, perhaps not articulated, but knows. And what they know is that he provides this immense brand value by acting as a global ambassador of cycling, of sports, not only of that, but of the nation itself as a national symbol of endurance and resilience and victory. And in his case, speed. And for a young country like Eritrea to be associated with those qualities of victory and resilience and speed is simply amazing. And of course, he's not only representing Eritrea, he's representing Africa, he's representing young people, he's breaking records and ceilings and so on. So but just to focus on Eritrea and what it means, I think he's the epitome of what I'm trying to say here. Another great name that Eritrea is being positively associated with is Alexander Isak. I think he's considered one of the most technical strikers in the world. He, of course, plays for the Swedish national team and the English Premier League. But at the end of the day, because of his background, because of his identity, he's always associated with Eritrea. And of course, his career reflects the generation of Eritreans who are born abroad and actually are also been very successful at it. But in his case, his name associated with football, so great for Eritrean football, great for Eritrean sports. At the same time, with his Eritrean identity, with Eritrea itself, the brand, his personal brand, to be associated with the country brand in terms of someone who is successful commercially at the global football, and one of the few people who are known throughout the world. That is actually very positive. And hopefully he will be able to do many great things for the Eritrean football team down the road. Moving on. Rahel Daniel. Rahel has achieved quite a lot already. She is currently one of the top-ranked female long-distance runners globally. That's amazing. She excels both in 10K and cross-country. In fact, she's been nominated to be one of the best cross-country runners in the world. So for Eritrea to be represented, and when she runs, she's wearing the Eritrean jersey. For Eritrea to be represented by her strength and agility, and to be also a symbol of this Eritrea's upcoming female pipeline in track and field, and also similarly we have the same in cycling. It's simply been amazing. Great ambassador for Eritrea. Similarly, with Lily Johannes, a young rising star in women's football, women's soccer in the US. She is the youngest player to debut and score for the US women's national team. And famously, she's the granddaughter of the legend, the Eritrean footballer, Bokrazien Gabrihuat, who at some time, in addition to playing in Eritrea and for Eritrea, he also played for the Ethiopian national team. So from speaking of representation, it doesn't matter who the athlete at the end of the day or which flag they happen to represent at one time, but the speaking of brand, speaking of association and perception and background investigation and identity, they will always be associated with Eritrea. And again, Eritrea Lily is another great asset to be also this young, and because she has a bright future in the future as well, to be associated with Eritrea. And just like Alexander Isak, she will be doing wonders for young Eritreans as well. And now for the man of the hour, Ali Suleiman, one of the great players of the current Eritrean national team. He's a prolific player and he's making history, and he built his reputation by playing successfully in the region, in Egypt, in Ethiopia. In fact, his high score in history in the Ethiopian Premier League is well known, and I think he's going to be instrumental. Hopefully, in not only in 2027 and even beyond. So athletes like him, again, in this case, someone who plays internationally in the region, in Ethiopia, in Egypt, and other places I may not be even aware of. At the end of the day, they also another great example of coming back to represent Eritrea, coming back to play for Eritrea. Number of the current team, I think from mostly probably from Europe, from Sweden and other places, have dropped what they were doing and came to play for Eritrea. So it's also in this kind of let's call it a new dynamic of representation. They may not necessarily live in the country, but they proudly participate in building that brand, not only helping the team win, but also representing the country as well. And I think over the years, we'll see more and more of this. And I am probably quite normal with other countries, but given the fact that Eritrea has been out of the game per se for the last 19 years, it is something like this that will leapfrog it to where it needs to be. In fact, they already proved that to be the way to go. Tasfalda Teke is another example of the diaspora players who have decided to, join the Red Sea Boys, the Red Sea Camels, and help them qualify. And hopefully in 2027 as well, we will see many of them. I can also mention another great player who has done the same thing, Oliver Hintsa. This highly technical pros who are at the peak of their career and have great opportunities ahead of them, but their commitment to represent Eritrea and the Eritrean national team has been as a blessing. Not only in terms of bringing in their technical expertise, but their reputation as well. And in 2027, I think we'll see many more of them. And in fact, the ones that already joined most likely will be part of that 2027 AFCON qualifying team and help Eritrea move on to the next stage. And again, not from a sports perspective only, but to elevate the stance of the country and the image, so that it will eventually help it attract more tourists and more investors and help Eritrean products and services be known in the world. That's the name of the game. So as I wrap up, the bigger story is that it's about representation. And of course, representation can only come when an athlete wins and makes the name for themselves, and they are able to achieve their personal achievement, maintain a good personal brand. And then by reflection, by extension, they represent Eritrea, sometimes formally, sometimes informally, sometimes because that's what they want to do, and sometimes whether they like it or not. But anyway, two upcoming athletes to watch for, because they already have broken the world record in running, one in the US. Here we have Haptom Samuel, He's at the University of New Mexico. He's been dominating this running circuits. He already broke a record for half marathon. I'm not sure if that's a world record or a personal record, but amazing. His time is great. So we'll probably see more of Haptom Samuel, because he already proved that he is going to be one of the world's elite tier runners. And as he makes a name for himself, definitely he will be a great ambassador for the Eritrean brand. And in Europe, another athlete with Eritrean background, Aman Al Petros. He already also he broke the German record for half marathon already, and again he's already making a name for himself and already dominating athletics in Europe. Again, every time his name is mentioned, he's already showing up as someone who also represents Eritrea or who also has an Eritrean story. And wishing him more success in the years to come. Finally, what I like to mention is a verse in the Eritrean national anthem. Somewhere in the middle, it says, in Tigrinya, Eritrea, 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 ab alam ጨቢጣቶ ግቡእ ክብራ. Loosely translated, it's Eritrea, Eritrea, Eritrea. It has achieved its rightful place in the world. Another way of saying it's equality among nations. Yes, we've been talking about branding a nation or elevating the story and telling a better narrative. But at the end of the day, for Eritreans at least, it's because it's part and fabric of the national identity. And that's the best way to understand them and what they are trying to achieve. And even sometimes when they are defensive about even criticism, it is because of this quest, because the path to the equality among nations was always blocked. They were always suppressed, and the quest for independence was the quest to be equal among nations. And in 1993, after the referendum, and it has formally achieved that. And since then, the larger overarching story is to be able to maintain that, to be able to pass that to the next generation. And it's already at the cusp of doing that. So this nation branding, or telling a better story, or coming up with a better narrative is the way to understand Eritreans, is the way to understand what this means. And that's why, there's, of course, we are talking about football and sports, and it's just sports at the end of the day. It should not be blown out of proportion, and it should not replace real progress. It should not replace policies that actually make a difference inside the country. But we're talking about the soft side of things, the most effective, but the one that tells you, it may not be a direct way of addressing national issues, and it's never a replacement of that, but it's the best way to understand what the nation is about, what Eritreans are about. Again, the key word here is equality, equal among nations. Eritreans are to be proud to be equal, not necessarily superior, not necessarily different or better, but it's the equality. So hopefully something like this helps you understand, especially those of you who are non-Eritreans, understand the country and its people better. And at the end of the day, one of the greatest inventions humanity came up with is to maintain peace and friendship and equality among the peoples of the world is sports. So looking forward to seeing more positive image of Eritrea, and wishing the best of luck to the Red Sea Camels. If you would like to see more analysis like this, please subscribe. The best way to support this channel is actually by engaging with it, by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. And I do read all your comments, and they influence what I will be talking about next. But for today, thank you for your time, and I will see you in the next briefing.